Hey guys, I wanted to throw this in really quick before this video. I was just about to render it and I got this email from Fashionphile and it says that today, Thursday, April 11th, 2019, they're having a one-day sale. It starts at noon and ends tomorrow, Friday, April, that would be the 12th, 2019 at noon. So today noon till tomorrow noon. And it's 10% off, or an extra 10% off any of their discounted items. You just have to use the code SPRING at checkout and that's it. So I'll put that information below. I'll put the link below that you can use. Hope you get some good things. I've got some things on my Fashionphile favorites list that I'm seriously considering getting. So that'll be helpful for me and I hope it helps you too. Enjoy the video. Hi YouTube, Autumn Beckman here. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. I just had to kick the dogs out because Roxy, she has become a little terror. She can't be awake and not be chewing on her brother Baron. She's just constantly chewing on him and playing and fighting, and she sounds like a demon when she fights and growls. She's nuts. She's crazy. I'll film it sometime and show you. It's so funny. But welcome to my channel. I am Autumn Beckman. My channel is all about luxury on a budget, so if you are into that sort of thing, this is the place for you. And this is a great example of the kind of videos that I do, besides talking about handbags and things, is stuff on how to save money on luxury. So this one, I have 20 questions for you. I don't know about you, but growing up poor, I'm very conscious of money. I tend to be pretty frugal in a lot of ways, even with luxury handbags. I tend to buy those pre-loved, and it's difficult for me to justify purchases sometimes. I really kind of struggle. Even when I have the money to make the purchases and I've got extra money left over and it's not gonna hurt me financially, it can be difficult for me psychologically to wrap my head around spending that much money on a little SLG or a handbag. So I thought that it would be helpful to some of you to talk about some of the questions that I go through when I am making a purchase. And some of this I use for small purchases too, like here's a little tip that I don't mention in the questions. When I go to TJ Maxx, I like to walk around the whole store and look at everything. And I usually see several things that I'm interested in, but this little tip, I feel like I've shared this before, but it was a long time ago. This little tip is that I don't go around with a cart and put things in my cart. What I do is walk the store first, I look at items, and then once I'm done, if there are still things that I remember that I want, then I'll consider buying them at that point. But most of the time, a lot of the things that I see and I'm like, oh yeah, I'll get that, and I would have put it in my cart if I'd had a cart with me, I forget about those things by the time I'm at the end of the store. So that's one little tip for you. Now let's jump into these 20 questions. Also, I do a lot of browsing every day on the pre-loved websites like Fashionphile and The RealReal, and I come across items that are tempting that I didn't even know existed. And sometimes they're items that I know are going to be hard to find, or they're at a great price or something. And these questions help me to figure out, they help me not to make impulse purchases. They help me figure out whether it's something that I really want or need. We don't need any of the luxury stuff, but you know what I mean. And it helps me make that decision of whether to purchase or whether not to purchase and save the money. All right, now let's get started with the 20 questions. Question 1, and I'm reading from my notes here. What do I want and how much am I willing to pay? So for this one, what I would recommend doing is making a wish list. Like sit at home or a coffee shop or wherever you like to go to relax and make a wish list for yourself. Write out all the items that you can think of that you want, and also put prices on them, and also put descriptions on them. So for example, if there's a handbag you want that comes in multiple colors, multiple sizes, multiple materials, write the name of the handbag, write exactly what you want, the size, the color, the material, whatever other options there are, and then write out the price that would be the most you'd be willing to spend. Once you have your wish list together, if you can, put them in order from what you want the most to what you want the least. That's a difficult thing to do. And sometimes it's not really possible, because sometimes there are items that, oh, I'd really love to have this item, but it's super hard to find. Like maybe the triangle softie from Louis Vuitton, which is very difficult to find, and when you do find it, or the Monogramouflage Speedy, both of those, very difficult to find, and they're upwards of $6,000 on the Preloved market. Personally, as much as I would love a triangle softie, I would never be able to justify that price for it. Maybe you want a bag like that that's really hard to find, and here's a price that you are actually willing to pay if you were to find that bag, but you know it's so rare that the chances of finding it are really slim, so maybe it wouldn't be at the top of your list. I don't know. You organize your list however makes sense to you. Question 2, why do I want this item? So for example, generally I want it because it's pretty isn't a good answer. If money is a factor for you, you probably need a bag that's more, or an SLG, whatever it is, that's more practical. So maybe add to your wish list, why do I want this bag? Like, what are the justifications for spending luxury money on this particular item? And those are gonna vary from person to person. Some will be more frivolous than others. Some things you'll get everyday use out of. That depends on you. Question 3, this is something that I've started to ask myself more recently, and that is, why do I want to own it? I have found that this is a great question for me to ask myself, because there are a lot of things that I see, and I think this is just part of being a consumer. You see something you like and you want it, but why do we feel like we have to have it? I feel like a lot of the items we can just appreciate from afar. Like, there are several SLGs or different colors of SLGs or little limited edition pieces that I see and I really like. I'm like, oh, I want that. But really, when I stop and think about it, I wouldn't get that much more pleasure out of having it than just seeing it and appreciating the design or whatever other elements I appreciate about it. So ask yourself that. Question 4, do I want it because I've seen it somewhere else? So have I seen it on somebody and I thought it looked good on them? Will it really work for me? Is it a trend? This is a good question for us because we're on social media. We see YouTubers with certain bags. We see Instagrammers with certain bags. And that exposure to the item over and over again often makes us like the item more, which makes us want it more. So for example, the Pochette Matisse. A lot of people, if I remember this correctly, didn't really care for the bag that much at first, but we kept seeing it over and over again in social media, and it's like everybody wants it now. So be aware of that. Be aware of how you might be influenced by influencers or advertisers or whatever else. Make sure you want it because you want it, not because you've seen it and you've grown to like it. Would you still want it if you hadn't seen it on all those people? Would you still want it if no one else wanted it? Question 5, do I want to buy an item because I really want this particular item, or just because I want to buy something and I have the itch to buy something? If it is the itch to buy something, could I satisfy that itch by buying something cheaper? So I often fall prey to this, where I have this need to buy something, and I can go a long time without doing it, and I'm pretty good about talking myself out of this. And I'm pretty good especially about if I want a luxury piece, not just going around buying those things or buying a bunch of smaller, less expensive SLGs that are still expensive, but maybe buying like a $10 item or something, or even talking myself out of it completely, nothing at all. But it's just another one of these questions about your motivations for buying, the psychology behind that. Just make sure that if you're gonna buy something, it's what you really want, and there's not something else going on that might be a little deeper. Question 6, will I use it? I keep looking at those little Chanel O cases. I'll put a picture of one here so you know what I'm talking about. I keep going back to those, like, oh, I want one, I want one. I keep putting them in my favorites list on Fashionphile and the RealReal, but I haven't bought one yet, and that's because I can't come up with a use for them where I could justify it. I think they're really cute. They seem like they'd be useful, but I don't know what I would use it for. And there are a few other items like that too. So before you spend money on something, especially a luxury purchase, really think about how you would use it. I've even gone to the point where I've sat down and made like pros and cons lists on items that I'm thinking about getting, just to make sure I really know what I'm doing here and I'm not just buying something on impulse or because I think it's pretty. Question 7 goes with the last question. It is, what will I use it for and how often realistically? And be specific with yourself. So you could come up, like I could come up with ways I could use that O case, but would I really use it for that? And how often would I use it for that? Would I have any concerns about damaging that item? That is one of my concerns with that item, is I would want to put it in a bag and I feel like the quilting would get smushed. And I feel like putting things in it, because it's kind of a flat case, would stretch it out. So I don't know, even if I did splurge and get one, if I would really use it, even if I thought of uses for it. Does that make sense? Question 8. If I want the item for a specific occasion, will I use the item again after that occasion? So for example, say you've got an event coming up, a wedding or a party or some kind of event, and you want to buy a little clutch for that event. Will you use the bag again after that event? You generally do know the answer to that. Personally, unless it's like a monumental occasion where I could justify splurging on myself for something that might only be used the one time. I don't think I'd buy something that would only be used one time, but something that would be used on very rare occasions, then maybe I'd splurge on that. But generally, that would be a no-go. But you'd have to decide that for yourself and answer that for yourself. Question 9, this goes back to question 1 where you made the wish list. If you're searching for a particular item, let's use that O case as an example again. Those O cases come in different sizes, different materials, different colors. There are also different models of the O case. There's some that have this sort of, it's not a plasticky lining, but I don't know what to call that material. It's kind of a shiny quilted interior, and then the newer ones are more of a stiffer fabric that doesn't seem as delicate as the old one. So if I was looking for an O case, I would probably be looking for a particular one, or maybe a couple particular ones that I liked. And I know, for example, that maybe I'd want the small size and I'd want the newer model. And I've put those items on my wish list. Now the plan is to go to Fashionphile, The RealReal, other Preloved sites, and start looking for that item. And I'm going to come across a lot of other O cases, and I'm gonna see some that I like. You have to be disciplined here. If you see something you like, you can't just jump on it without asking these questions of yourself if you're trying to be financially responsible. Stick to your list. Unless there's something that just really blows your mind that you didn't know existed. I mean, there are exceptions to these things, but generally stick to your list. If you see something and everything is perfect about it, but it's not the right size, don't get it. If everything is perfect about it, but it's not the right model, don't get it. That's not the one you want. Generally, I have found that when I settle for something that's not exactly what I want, that I end up still getting the thing I want. A lot of these questions and a lot of the hunt for the right thing, it just takes patience, and that can be frustrating because some of these things are hard to find and you feel like you're never gonna find it, or you come across other things that are so tempting, but you've saved up your money for this thing. So you just have to be disciplined about it. Don't get something that isn't exactly what you want. Don't settle. Question 10, do I already have something similar? If so, how is this item different? And is the difference enough to justify this item? So for example, if you're looking for a black bag with silver hardware, do you already have a black bag with silver hardware? If so, why do you need two? What kind of difference is there? Maybe you need one with a shoulder strap and the one you have doesn't have that. Maybe you need a different size than the one you have. Maybe the one you're looking for has some kind of other decorative element that gives it a different feel or a different material. I try not, a lot of it is for financial reasons, I try not to duplicate pieces too much. The one thing I will say that I feel like I have kind of duplicated is my Delightful PM and my Noe GM. Those two bags are very similar size. They're almost the same size, and that I have them both in the monogram print. So they function pretty much the same for me, but I do get different uses out of them. And there are things that I like about one bag that the other doesn't have, or vice versa. So just be aware of that sort of thing. Good questions to ask yourself before making these purchases. Question 11, is there something in a similar price range that I'd rather have? I ask myself this question all the time when it comes to luxury because the prices are kind of wonky. So for example, if there is, okay, I've wanted something from the Vuitton Turquoise V line for a while now. And I decided at some point that I didn't want to get the Speedy or the Neverfull, which is originally what I thought I wanted, because I didn't want that much bright turquoise out in the open. I wanted it to be more subtle, a smaller piece inside a bag, because I finally saw that bag in person and the turquoise was much brighter than I thought it would be. So I decided what I'd do is just get a little round bag charm, which I still haven't found. But when I do find that bag charm, it's probably going to be priced at $300 or $400. And I've had this dilemma before where I want an item and I've decided that I want this particular item and this particular price, and then I find it and then I'm like, wait a minute. $400 for this little bag charm that has no other function than decoration. What else could I do with that $400 that might be a better way to spend my money and still be a luxury item that I'd enjoy? I could get a cosmetic bag for $400. I could get 2 clays, which I would use more. I could get a clay and a twilly, and I think the twillies are prettier bag decorations and you can do more with them. They're more versatile. I could get an old model pochette accessoire. There are all kinds of things I could get with $400 instead of a little bag charm that just hangs there and looks pretty but has no function. So sometimes, even if something is on my wish list, I talk myself out of it for those reasons. Question 12, would I rather use this money towards something that's more expensive? I run across this a lot too. I'll have a handbag in mind that I really want, but it's something that I have to save up for. And as I'm saving, I come across cheaper items when I'm browsing that, hey, I've got enough I could get that. But if I get it, well, that's money away from the handbag. Sometimes it's a good idea, at least for me. There are things that I can justify taking the money away from the handbag savings to spend on this because it's the right item at the right price and maybe it's hard to find. So I know that that's an item I should jump on when I see it. But other times you want to restrain yourself from that and just keep saving for that bigger item. And that just depends on you. Question 13, and this is the researcher in me and the bargain hunter. Can I get it cheaper somewhere else? Whether it's another seller, whether it's Preloved or retail, because sometimes items on the Preloved market are actually cheaper retail, or even a different item. So we just kind of talked about that. So can I get it cheaper somewhere else? If I find something, even if I know it's a good deal, and especially if I don't know for sure if it's a good deal, so it's an item that I haven't done that much research on. Let's say I see something on the RealReal that I feel like, hey, that's an item that I really want, that seems like a good price, but before I jump on it, unless I know for sure that that's, like I said, a hard to find item and that's the right price and I might lose it if I go look somewhere else, then I'll just favorite it and then I'll go look at all the other sites and search for the same item and see what they're selling for. And very often I find the same item or a similar item cheaper somewhere else. So you just have to do your research. And like I said, be aware some items are cheaper in the store. Also keep in mind tax and shipping. Like the RealReal charges tax and shipping, but Fashionphile doesn't unless you live in California. So there are price differences there. And sometimes I make purchases with Affirm, which is an online credit company. So I can make the purchase through Affirm and then pay it off. And I've talked about them before. What I love about them is it's not like a credit card where it's constantly building interest and you can never get it paid off if you're doing minimums. They break the payments, including interest, into monthly payments that when the year is up, when 1 year is up, you're paid off. There's no extra interest. You know exactly what you're paying when you make your purchase. And if you do that, that does add interest. You just know it's a set amount. So keep that in mind too when you're purchasing whatever extra cost there might be. Because sometimes, like a Fashionphile has an item marked at a certain price, but Louis Vuitton has it lower in retail in the store. Once you go to the store and you add the tax, it might be more expensive than Fashionphile. So it just depends. But then maybe it's worth that extra money in retail because you've bought it at the store, and if there are problems, you can deal with those at the store. It depends. There are a lot of scenarios here. You have to take all of this into account. Question 14, do I want it because it's a good deal? If yes, what about the rest of it? So if you find something that is a great deal, you know it's a great deal price-wise, ask yourself, is this really something I want, or am I only drawn to it because I know it's such a good deal? There was a pochette accessoire that popped up on Fashionphile, and it was a limited edition one. It was yellow with black polka dots. Those don't come up for sale very often, and I like them. I think they're pretty. And it was a great price. It was marked at $495, and usually when I've seen those, they've been more like $700 or $800. I was very tempted to buy it because I knew it was such a great deal, and I really liked that bag. But I would never wear it, partly because it's patent leather, and I made a decision a while back not to buy any patent leather because of various problems with caring for that and color transfer and that sort of thing. But also because of the colors, even though I like it and think it's pretty, those colors and the pattern don't work for my wardrobe. And it's kind of tough sometimes when you know something's a really good deal not to get it. But I restrained myself, I was strong. I've actually become very good at that over the years, about restraining myself. I've said this before too. I go to TJ Maxx or something where I'm looking around and come home with a bag of something and the boyfriend's, oh, you bought something else. This actually hasn't happened in a long time because I don't do that very often anymore. But he'll say, oh, you bought something else. And I'll say, yeah, but you won't believe all the things I didn't buy. And it's true. And it's because I ask myself all these questions. Question 15, if you are into brand names, and a lot of us are if we're into luxury, would you still want this item if it didn't have that brand name on it? Be honest with yourself. Question 16, would I still want this item if I waited a while? This is a trick that I use, well, it's not really a trick, but it's a strategy that I use all the time. Unless it's something that I know I need to jump on, I make myself wait. I put things in my cart, I think about them. There have been many times when I get really excited about an item and I want to jump on it, but I know that I shouldn't, and I make myself wait, and once I've thought about it, I talk myself out of it. And a lot of that talking myself out of it has to do with these questions and the answers that I come up with. This is true too with the luxury brands because they have these special collections that come out every few times a year, and there's a lot of hype around them in our luxury community here on YouTube and on Instagram, and you see people talking about them in the anticipation for the release of the items. And then they come out and you see everybody buying them. And if you like some of the items in the release, it kind of makes you want to run out and get one while you can because you know they're going to sell out. But you've got to decide ahead of time or in the moment, you've got to decide, is that an item that will really stand the test of time with me? Or do I just want it because of all the hype right now? Question 17, will it wear well over time? That's one of the things I love so much about the pre-loved market is you can find these items, unless they're brand new releases, you can find these items and find them in different stages of wear. So you can see how it does wear over time once it gets a little beat up. You can see how the corners wear on the bag or how a bag might lose its shape or other problems with the bag. And that really helps me make a decision on whether or not it's worth it to spend luxury money on that particular piece. Question 18, if I buy this now and I have a feeling I'm probably really not going to use it that much and eventually I'll probably want to sell it, is it worth the pain of having to sell it later for the pleasure of buying it now? Does that make sense? So if you know when we buy something it makes us happy, but then if you don't use it, it just sits there, then you're not getting any use out of it. Doesn't have a lot of value, and then when you go try to sell it, it's a pain to list something, try to sell it, ship it, and deal with all that. It's just kind of a pain. So knowing that that could be in your future, is that worth the little bit of pleasure that you'll get now? And if it's something you know you're probably going to end up selling, it's probably something you shouldn't be buying anyway, at least for me. Question 19, I touched a little on this earlier. Is this item for a special occasion? Are you buying it for yourself for a special occasion? In that case, I would be more lenient with the other questions because sometimes there's just something that you like and you want and it may not be practical, but you still want it, and there's an occasion where you feel like you can splurge on yourself. And it's okay, and you can justify it because of that. And that's awesome. It's difficult for me to justify that. I have a 40th birthday coming up. I'd like to do something nice for myself, get myself a nice handbag, and I'm working on saving up toward that. But I know when the time comes, you know, I could say, I posted a video on Instagram a few weeks ago of me with a Chanel Business Affinity handbag and the Chanel boutique, and I could say I could save up the $4,000+. Actually, it's closer to $5,000 with tax if I was to buy it new in the boutique. So I could save up that money, I could have it, but that's a whole bunch of money for a bag, at least for me. I'm not used to spending that much on anything, let alone a handbag. So even if I had that money, I don't think I'd be able to justify that kind of purchase. But that's me, my financial situation, the psychology of my shopping. For you, it might be different. I mean, I'd probably have trouble spending $2,000 or $3,000, to be honest. And that's one of the reasons I stick to the pre-loved market. Even if I'm splurging on myself, I really like to feel like I got a good deal on something. And that's just part of how I was raised. That's really stuck with me. It's my grandmother's fault. She was also a bargain hunter and she instilled that in me. And question 20. I think this is especially true if you're trying to save up for something. Ask yourself, would I rather have this item or would I rather have my money? And it's a legitimate question. And I think that can really help you make your decision. Because sometimes, as much as I might want this particular item, I would rather have the money in the bank, or to have towards savings, or put towards something else, or spend it on something else completely. It doesn't have to be a luxury item. Now, I've talked about all these questions in regards to luxury items, but they can apply to everyday shopping too. A lot of people spend, or I've heard from a lot of people that they feel like they spend too much on clothes. Asking these questions, at least some of them, can help with those purchases too. I hope this has been helpful. In the comment section, maybe you could let us know what questions you ask yourself to justify purchases or to talk yourself out of things, what questions you have that I didn't mention, and what questions that I did have that you found most helpful. Thanks so much for watching. Have a fantastic day. Bye.